Only fools work late, Margot. But hey, at least the lights know your name by now. His voice dripped with that same mocking tone as he paused at my desk. Thin Holloway, our vice president of investment strategy, standing there in his tailored suit while I hunched over spreadsheets, the office empty except for us and the cleaning staff. I didn't look up, not because I was focused, though I was, but because I couldn't bear the gleam in his eyes, that perfect mixture of pity and superiority he'd perfected over the 3 years I'd worked there. Someone has to finish the Richards portfolio before tomorrow's meeting, I said, keeping my voice even while heat crawled up my neck. Someone always has to, don't they? He chuckled, tapping my desk twice. Don't forget to turn off the coffee maker when you leave. Wouldn't want our little worker be burning down the hive. He walked away whistling. The sound echoed through the empty office like it was laughing at me too. That moment, that exact moment when his footsteps faded into the elevator chime, that's when something broke inside me. I'm Margot Linden. 32 years old. Financial analyst with a master's degree gathering dust while my life gathered coffee stains and takeout containers. People tell me I'm smart. Determined. My mom calls me stubborn. My ex called me obsessive before he left. Said, I cared more about numbers than living. Maybe he was right. Before I go any further, I'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to tell me in the comments where you're watching this from. It helps to know my story is reaching beyond these walls I've been trapped in. And if you connect with what I'm saying, please like and subscribe. Trust me when I say what comes next changed everything for me, and maybe it will for you too. I wasn't always the office doormat. I came to this investment firm burning with ambition. Top of my class at a state university, not Ivy League, which I learned quickly was strike one. No family connections, strike two. Woman in finance? You can guess strike three. But I worked. God, how I worked. First one in, last one out. Learning everything. Offering ideas in meetings that Thin would pause at, squint slightly, then rephrase as his own moments later to applause. That night, the night everything changed, was a Friday in November. The office had emptied by 5:15. Thin had done his usual drive-by mockery at 5 sharp, heading off to whatever exclusive restaurant or club waited for him. I needed to finish projections for 3 major client portfolios. My eyes burned, my shoulders ached, but the fear of looking unprepared in Monday's meeting burned hotter. At 9:47 p.m., I needed access to our proprietary analytics platform to run comparison models. My access level couldn't pull certain historical data. I'd have to request it Monday. Too late. Unless I walked down the silent corridor toward the executive offices. Security was minimal on weekends. Key card for the building, but internal offices stayed unlocked. Most executives locked their computers. But Thin boasted about never taking work home. About his clean desk policy. About the fact that only fools work late. His office door was open. I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, telling myself I'd just check if he'd left a report on his desk I could use. The blue glow of his computer monitor reflected against the window. Still on. Still logged in. I only meant to access the company analytics platform. That's all. Just pull the data I needed and go back to my desk. I sat in his chair, leather that probably cost more than my monthly rent, moved his mouse. The screen brightened. It wasn't our company system displayed on his monitor. It was a trading platform. A personal trading account. Names jumped out at me. Familiar names. Our clients. Companies we were advising on mergers, acquisitions, restructuring. Dates. Transactions. Profits. My fingers went numb as I scrolled, not touching anything else, just scrolling through page after page of trades. Each one precisely timed. each one showing staggering returns. Buy orders placed days before we announced our guidance to clients. Sell orders executed hours after our recommendations moved markets. 3 years of data. 2.8 million in profits. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of his desk to steady myself. Thin Holloway was trading on our confidential client information. Using data I gathered during those late nights, to make personal trades before our recommendations went public. Insider trading. Financial fraud. Criminal activity that could not only destroy his career but potentially our entire firm. I sat there, staring at the screen. My reflection pale and ghostly in its light. I could forward the evidence to myself. Screenshot it. Report him immediately. But something held me back. A cold, clear thought cutting through my shock. Thin Holloway was untouchable. His uncle sat on the board. His connections reached into regulatory agencies, competitor firms, even politics. If I moved clumsily, accused him directly with evidence I shouldn't have accessed, he'd destroy me without blinking. So I did something else entirely. I memorized patterns. Dates. Companies. Trade sizes. Then I carefully backed out of his account, leaving everything exactly as I found it. Walked back to my desk on legs that felt distant, disconnected from my body. And I began to work, not on the client portfolios due Monday, on something else entirely. For the next 7 hours I built a spreadsheet. A timeline. I pulled public trading data, news announcements, our firm's public recommendations, information anyone could access. I cross-referenced everything against our company calendar. The public one showing when major client meetings occurred. Not what was discussed, just when they happened. By 5 a.m., I had it. A pattern so clear it practically glowed on my screen. I didn't need Thin's private account information. The evidence was there, in public data, if you knew how to look for it. Every major trade in his pattern matched perfectly with our client meeting schedule. The timing was irrefutable. But I needed more. I needed a weapon so powerful it couldn't be turned back on me. I went home at 6 a.m., showered, changed, and came back to the office. Saturday. No one there. Perfect. I spent that entire weekend building my case, not with illegal evidence, with analytics, with patterns, with mathematical proof that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. By Sunday night I had a 27-page analysis, professional, thorough, devastating. Nothing in it came from unauthorized access, just brilliant, painstaking analysis that connected public dots nobody had bothered to connect before. I printed one copy, saved the file to an encrypted drive, and went home to sleep for exactly 4 hours before the most important Monday of my life. That morning I dressed carefully, not in my usual practical workwear but in my one good interview suit. Hair neat, makeup minimal but precise. I looked formidable. Not like myself at all. At 7:30 in the morning I walked into the office and directly to the compliance department. Ray Okapour, our chief compliance officer, was already at her desk. She looked up, surprised to see me. "Margot, everything okay?" I closed her door and sat down, placed my analysis on her desk. "I've been tracking some unusual market patterns," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "I thought you might find this educational." She frowned. "What am I looking at exactly?" "A statistical analysis of certain trading patterns that correlate with our firm's client meeting schedule. Just something I noticed while working on portfolio trend analytics." She picked up the document, flipped through the first few pages. Her expression changed. "Where did you get this information?" she asked carefully. "All public sources," I said truthfully. "Trading records available through financial databases, our publicly available meeting calendar, news releases." I just connected the dots. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And what exactly are you suggesting, Margot? I kept my face neutral. I'm not suggesting anything. I simply noticed a statistical anomaly that seemed significant enough to bring to compliance's attention. I believe that's my obligation under firm policy. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you for bringing this to me. I'll review it immediately. I stood. Of course. I'm just doing my job. I walked out of her office, legs shaking so badly I almost stumbled, made it to my desk and collapsed into my chair, heart thundering in my chest. The boulder had started rolling downhill. I couldn't stop it now if I wanted to. 2 hours later, Ray was in a closed-door meeting with the general counsel. By noon, internal audit had been pulled in. At 2 p.m., Finn strutted into the weekly strategy meeting 15 minutes late, as usual. He barely glanced at me as I presented my client analysis, the legitimate one I'd finished after my weekend project. Interesting approach, Margot, he said when I finished, that familiar condescending smile playing at his lips. Though perhaps a bit excessive in detail. Remember, clients don't pay us to drown them in spreadsheets. Several people chuckled. I smiled back at him, a new kind of smile, one that knew things he didn't know yet. Thank you for the feedback, I said pleasantly. I always appreciate your perspective. Something in my tone made his eyes narrow slightly, but the meeting moved on. 3 days passed. Normal days on the surface. I did my work, stayed late, endured Finn's daily "only fools work late" comment as he left each evening. But beneath the surface, things were happening. Ree's door remained closed most of the time. People from departments that rarely interacted were suddenly in meetings together. On Thursday afternoon, Finn was called to the executive floor. He walked past my desk, straightening his tie, looking annoyed at the interruption to his day. He didn't come back down. At 5:30 p.m., an all-staff email arrived. Finn Halloway was no longer with the firm, effective immediately. No explanation given. A terse reminder about the company's confidentiality policies and code of ethics followed. I sat at my desk, staring at the email, a strange emptiness washing over me. Not triumph, not yet, just space. The absence of something that had been crushing me for 3 years. Friday morning, I arrived to find Finn's office being cleared out. Security stood watchful as facilities staff boxed up his belongings. At 10 a.m., Ray called me into her office. She closed the door. Margot, she said, her voice careful, controlled. Your analysis was illuminating. I waited. The firm is dealing with a significant situation now, one that requires absolute discretion. I nodded. May I ask what prompted you to conduct this analysis in the first place? The moment of truth. I'd rehearsed this answer for days. I've been studying advanced pattern recognition in financial data. It's become something of a personal project. The correlations emerged organically from my practice data sets. Not a lie. Not entirely. She studied me. That's quite remarkable. Thank you. We'll need your continued discretion on this matter. Absolutely no discussion with anyone. There will likely be regulatory involvement. I nodded again. Of course. She leaned forward slightly. The executive committee has asked me to inform you that your contribution has been noted. There will be appropriate recognition when this situation is resolved. I understood what she wasn't saying. Keep quiet, and you'll be rewarded. Eventually. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. Ray, I just want you to know, I've always cared about this firm's reputation. I would never do anything to damage it. Something like respect flickered in her eyes. I believe you, Margot. I walked back to my desk feeling strange. Hollow, but also filling with something new. Something that felt dangerously like power. That evening, as I worked late again out of habit, I heard the elevator ding. Footsteps approached my desk. I looked up to see Finn Holloway, security escort, flanking him. He'd been allowed to come back to collect a few personal items. His face was ashen, eyes hollow. For a second, our gazes locked. The smirk was gone. The confidence evaporated. What remained was something raw and ugly, hatred burning so hot it seemed to warp the air between us. He stopped at my desk, security hovering nervously behind him. "You," he whispered, just that one word, loaded with a lifetime of venom. I met his eyes steadily, said nothing. "This isn't over," he said, his voice barely audible. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I set down my pen carefully. "Actually, Finn, I believe I do." My voice came out stronger than I'd expected. "And you're right about one thing, only fools work late." His face contorted. For a heartbeat, I thought he might lunge across the desk at me. The security guards tensed. But then something calcified in his expression, a cold mask sliding into place. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he said, then turned and walked away. I watched him go, his shoulders rigid, his steps uneven. When the elevator doors closed behind him, I realized I was gripping my desk so hard my fingernails had left crescent moons in the laminate. What I didn't know then, that brief exchange was just the opening move in a game I hadn't planned for. The next 2 weeks passed in strange, shifting currents. I was called into meetings with people who'd never acknowledged my existence before, asked to explain my analysis again and again to different audiences, internal audit, external counsel, eventually representatives from the regulatory authority, who arrived without announcement one Tuesday. I stuck to my story: pattern recognition, public data, statistical anomalies that caught my attention. Nobody challenged me directly about how I'd made the connection to Finn specifically. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they were just grateful someone had caught it before the scandal exploded beyond containment. Through it all I kept working, harder than ever, as if to prove I was exactly who I'd always been: dedicated, thorough, reliable Margot. But I wasn't the same. Something had awakened in me, a sense of my own capability that I'd somehow lost under years of Finn's belittling. Then came the first sign of trouble, an email from a name I didn't recognize. Subject line: "I know." I opened it with trembling fingers. "You weren't just analyzing patterns, were you? We should talk soon." No signature. The sender address was a random jumble of letters at a public email service. I deleted it instantly, then emptied the trash folder, heart racing. I glanced around the office. Everyone looked normal. No one watching me. That night I couldn't sleep. Paced my apartment until 3 a.m., jumping at every sound from the street below. Had I missed something? Left a trail? Was someone watching when I entered Finn's office that night? The next morning, another email. Same sender. Ignoring me isn't wise. Finn has friends. Powerful ones. Meet me tonight. 8 p.m. The bench across from your apartment building. Ice settled in my stomach. They knew where I lived. I deleted this email too. But the damage was done. My safe, contained plan was unraveling. That evening I stood at my apartment window, peering through a crack in the curtains at the bench across the street. At 7:58, a woman sat down. Early 40s. Sharp features. Expensive coat. No one I recognized. I watched her for 20 minutes. She checked her watch. Looked around. Eventually made a call. After 30 minutes she left. The next morning, "You should have met me." Now it gets complicated. I didn't delete this one. Instead, I replied, "Who are you?" The response came within minutes. Someone who knows you accessed Finn's computer directly. Someone with the server logs to prove it. My body went cold. The firm's IT security system, it would have logged my entry into Thin's office area after hours. Would have recorded network activity from his computer while I was there. I'd been so careful with what I took, nothing directly from his account, that I'd overlooked the simplest evidence. What do you want? I wrote back. Protection. Same as you. Meet tonight. Same place. Don't ghost me again. This time I went. Hood up against the rain, hands shoved in my pockets, I crossed the street at 8:03 p.m. and sat beside the woman. Margot Linden, she said without looking at me. Bold move, with Thin. Who are you? I asked again. She turned slightly. Vadiker. IT security director at your firm. Or I was, until yesterday. My pulse jumped. You were fired? A short, bitter laugh. Placed on administrative leave. Pending investigation into how a compliance breach of this magnitude went undetected. Understanding dawned. They're making you the scapegoat. Someone has to be. Thin's uncle sits on the board. The firm can't afford the publicity of prosecuting him fully. So they'll settle quietly with regulators. And heads will roll internally instead. She looked at me directly. Starting with mine. And eventually yours. Why mine? I reported the activity properly. Through channels. Did you? After accessing a senior executive's computer without authorization? After building your analysis based on information you had no legitimate reason to be looking for? She shook her head. They're already asking questions about your methods, Margot. It's only a matter of time. The world tilted beneath me. I'd been so careful. So thorough. But I'd underestimated the system's need to protect itself. What's your play here? I asked. I've been watching Thin for months, she said. Suspected something was off with his trading patterns. Was building my case carefully. Then you blew it wide open. She paused. Recklessly. I didn't save it. I have the access logs. I know exactly how long you were in his office that night. What I don't know is how you chose not to take the obvious route of sending yourself evidence or screenshots. I said nothing. That's what saved you, so far, she continued. You were smart enough not to leave digital fingerprints on the actual trading account data. But you still broke protocol. And when they need someone else to blame besides me? Guess who's next? What do you want from me? I asked again. She turned fully toward me. The real question is, what can we do for each other? Because I had something on Thin that goes beyond the trading activity. Something that explains why he was so untouchable. Why his uncle protected him despite knowing he was a liability. My interest sharpened. What? The money wasn't just for him. He was funneling it upward. To board members. To people who could ensure the firm got certain clients. Certain deals. The implications hit me like a physical blow. A kickback scheme. She nodded. Layered beneath the insider trading. That's why they're in damage control. If regulators follow the money all the way through, half the executive floor goes down. You have proof. I have trails. Network analysis showing document access patterns that make no sense, unless they were coordinating. Data that was supposed to be compartmentalized, flowing between segregated systems. I absorbed this. So what are you proposing? We have 3 days before the external audit team gets access to the secured servers. Once that happens, we're both exposed. You for your unauthorized access. Me for not catching Thin sooner. She leaned closer. Unless we give them something bigger to focus on. The kickback scheme. With enough evidence that they can't bury it. Can't contain it. can't make it disappear with a few sacrificial firings. I should have walked away. Should have gone back to my apartment. Packed my things and disappeared. Applied for jobs in another city. Another industry. Instead, I heard myself ask, "What do you need me to do?" The next 3 days blurred together. By day, I played my role, the diligent analyst cooperating fully with the investigation. By night, I worked with Vad, piecing together fragments of data she'd been collecting for months. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. 6 board members implicated. Millions flowing through shell companies. Clients being pushed toward investment strategies that generated maximum fees while delivering suboptimal returns. It wasn't just thin. It was rot throughout the entire system. On the 3rd night, Vad arrived at our meeting with a small drive. "It's all here," she said. "Cleaned. Organized. Irrefutable. A complete map of the money flow. Documented evidence of coordination. Timestamps of document access that prove intent." I took the drive. "And this protects us how?" "Because I've scrubbed all evidence of your access to Thin's computer that night. And I've created a digital trail showing I was investigating the larger scheme all along. That I held back from reporting because of the scope. Not negligence. Will that work?" She shrugged. "It's better than what awaits us if we do nothing." I turned the drive over in my hand. "So we just, what? Hand this to the authorities?" "Not directly. Too risky. We need a buffer. Someone with enough public standing that they can't be silenced." "Who?" "Alora Voss." I blinked. "The financial crimes reporter? The one who broke the story on that hedge fund scandal last year?" Vad nodded. "She's been sniffing around our firm for months. Probably heard whispers. She has the platform, and the credibility, to make this stick. We were considering press down on me. This would destroy the firm. Thousands of people work there, not all of them are corrupt. The firm will survive, changed, but intact. The alternatives are worse." She fixed me with a steady gaze. "They're already building the case against us, Margot. Yesterday they pulled access logs for the executive floor. They're piecing it together." I closed my fingers around the drive. "How do we reach Voss?" "I've arranged a meeting tomorrow night. She thinks she's getting a lead on a minor trading irregularity. She has no idea what we're really bringing her." That night I didn't sleep at all. Kept the drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book, the kind of ridiculous precaution that would have made me laugh weeks earlier. Now it felt necessary. The next day at work, I noticed the difference immediately. People avoiding eye contact, conversation stopping when I approached, my computer running slightly slower, being monitored. "Ray called me into her office at 4 p.m. OT, she said, her face unreadable. "I wanted to update you on the situation." I sat, keeping my expression neutral. "The review has expanded beyond Thin's activities. We're now looking at certain irregularities in system access across several departments." My mouth went dry. "I see. We'll need you to meet with the external review team tomorrow." "Just routine," she added, not meeting my eyes. "Everyone is being interviewed." Not everyone, I thought. Just the people they've decided to sacrifice. "Of course," I said. "Happy to help." She studied me for a moment. "You've done exemplary work here, Margot. I hope you know that's recognized." The past tense wasn't lost on me, had done, was recognized. I was already gone in her mind. That evening I met Vad at a coffee shop 3 neighborhoods away from our usual spots. Alora Voss sat in the corner, attention fixed on her phone. Smaller than she looked in her news segments. Sharper, somehow. She looked up as we approached, didn't offer to shake hands. You have 5 minutes, she said. Make it count. Vita slid into the booth beside her. I took the seat opposite. We were told you're looking into trading irregularities at our firm, Vita began. Voss's expression didn't change. Among other things. What if we told you the trading violations are just the surface? I said. Her eyes shifted to me, narrowed slightly. I'd say that's what they always are. I placed my hand on the table, the drive concealed in my palm. What if we could give you everything? Names, dates, transaction records, evidence of a systematic fraud that reaches the highest levels of our firm and beyond. For the first time, a flicker of real interest crossed her face. Why would you do that? Because we're about to be scapegoated, Vad said flatly. Because the people who should be held accountable never are. Because we're tired of watching clients get cheated while executives get rich. Voss sat back. You understand I'll need to verify everything. That I won't shield your identities if this becomes a story. We're not asking you to, I said. We just want the truth to come out. All of it. She considered us for a long moment, then held out her hand. I passed her the drive beneath the table. I'll be in touch, she said, rising. Or I won't. If this is a waste of my time, you'll never hear from me again. She left without another word. Vita and I sat in silence. The thing was done now, no taking it back. What happens tomorrow? I finally asked. We go to work, she said. We act normal. We wait. For how long? She gathered her coat. Not long, I think. Alora Voss doesn't sit on stories like this. She was right. The next morning I woke to my phone vibrating itself off my nightstand. 17 missed calls, dozens of text messages, breaking news alerts. Financial giant implicated in massive fraud, the headlines screamed. Board members named in kickback investigation. Alora Voss's byline. Quotes from sources close to the investigation. Documents reproduced in crisp detail. My hands shook as I scrolled through the article. She'd used everything we gave her, named names, detailed the money flows, exposed the entire system. And at the center of it all, Finn Halloway. The lieutenant who had carried out the board's dirty work while building his own side business of illegal trades. I called Vad. No answer. My work phone rang, the firm's general number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was brief: all staff are instructed not to report to the office today. Further instructions will follow. Do not speak to the media. Too late for that. By noon, the story had exploded across every financial news outlet. Regulators had announced a formal investigation. The firm's stock was in freefall. Vita finally called back. It worked, she said, her voice tight with tension. Better than we expected. What do we do now? Nothing. We've done our part. Now we watch. What followed was a week unlike any I'd experienced. The firm closed its offices pending internal review. Regulators seized servers. Former clients filed lawsuits. And through it all, Vita and I waited, for accusations, for investigators to question our role, for Thin or someone else to point fingers at us. But something unexpected happened instead. Alora Voss published a follow-up story about whistleblowers within the firm who had tried to raise concerns through proper channels, about evidence of coordinated efforts to silence them. She didn't name us. But she created a narrative, one that cast anyone who had opposed the corruption as heroes rather than rule breakers. 10 days after the story broke, I received a call from the firm's interim CEO, a woman brought in from outside to manage the crisis. Miss Linden, she said. I'd like you to come in tomorrow to discuss your role going forward. My role? I echoed. We're rebuilding, she said simply. We need people we can trust. I looked around my apartment at the half-packed boxes, the resumed drafts scattered across my table. I'd been preparing to leave. To start over somewhere untainted by all this. I'll think about it, I said. That night I met Vad one last time. They've offered me my job back, she said, with a promotion. Me too. Some kind of role in the new compliance structure. We sat with that for a while. Are you going to take it? She asked. I looked out at the city lights. I don't know. Are you? No, she smiled slightly. I've had enough of corporate security. I'm going independent, consulting for firms that actually want to find their vulnerabilities before they become disasters. I nodded. It suited her. What about you, Margot? What do you really want? The question caught me off guard. For so long I'd been focused on proving myself. On surviving. On not drowning in a system designed to keep people like me underwater. I hadn't asked myself what I wanted beyond that. I began. Then stopped. Started again. I want to build something. Not just analyze what others have built. I want to use what I know about patterns and systems to create something better. So do that, she said simply. The next day I declined the firm's offer. The day after that, I started drafting a business plan for a financial analytics consultancy focused on ethical investment strategies. 3 months later, I received an email from a name I recognized instantly. Finn Hellaway. You won was all it said. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. It wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to keep playing a rigged game. Sometimes I think about that night in his office, how close I came to taking the easy path of simply reporting what I'd seen. How that would have ended with him receiving a quiet warning, perhaps a fine, while the larger corruption continued unchecked. Instead, I'd found a different way. A harder path that ultimately led to something like justice. 1 year later, my consultancy has 6 employees. We work normal hours. No late nights. No burnout culture. We choose our clients carefully. We price our services fairly. And sometimes, when I'm locking up the office at 5 p.m. sharp, I think about Finn's words, only fools work late. He was right, but not in the way he thought. The real foolishness wasn't in the hours I worked. It was in accepting a system that demanded those hours while rewarding the wrong people. The real fool was me. For so long. Until I wasn't. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped in a system that takes your work, your dignity, your worth, and gives nothing back, I want you to know there's another way. It's not easy. It's terrifying, actually. But on the other side of that terror is something better. Please like this video if it meant something to you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories of people who found their way out of broken systems. And leave a comment letting me know if you've ever had your own moment of realizing you deserved better. Because you do. We all do. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do isn't working harder within a broken system, it's having the courage to imagine and build a better one.